Hello and welcome to the Trusted Advisor, a channel-focused podcast and video series powered by the Retail Solutions Providers Association. I'm Jim Roddy, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. This episode of the Trusted Advisor is sponsored by ScanSource. ScanSource wants to make it easy for their partners to find the right technologies to build complete solutions, close more deals, and even transition to the cloud. With the industry's most comprehensive selection of technology and a team that's second to none in the channel, VARs, agents, ISOs, and ISVs can be assured they have access to the solutions they need, the support and services they desire, and the tools to bring it all together. And with ScanSource's 2017 acquisition of POS Portal, an industry-leading innovator in merchant services, the company is positioned as a market leader in the point-of-sale and payments channels, providing new opportunities for partners to deliver exceptional service and solutions to their end-user customers. So whether your customers are in the restaurant, retail, healthcare, or grocery industry, ScanSource delivers uniquely tailored point-of-sale, barcode, mobile pay, mobile computing, and printing services to help you provide the total solutions they need. For more information, visit scansource.com. That's scansource.com. Well, today on the podcast, we have a return guest, a very special guest, someone that RSPA members are starting to know very well, RSPA Legal Counsel, Jill Miller. Welcome back to the pod, Jill.
Hello.
Always great to talk with you. For those of the folks who aren't aware, Jill was named RSPA Legal Counsel in January of this year, and since then she's been working alongside longtime association legal counsel Bob Goldberg, who will retire in December. So I'm so glad to talk with you because I enjoy your wisdom, and it's also free legal advice as well, right? You don't get to
right.
Don't get a lot of
I
that.
start the clock.
Exactly. Yeah, start it now. Bill me in 15-minute increments. Well, the good thing is for myself today, for our listeners, for RSPA members, Jill, the RSPA Legal Counsel services are provided unlimited phone calls at no charge if you're an RSPA member. And so, Jill, you have a behind-the-scenes perspective on a channel that most other people don't. So what are you hearing? What do you see as the most common challenges, or the most daunting challenges that VARs and ISVs are facing today? What are common issues that members are reaching out to you about?
I would say, primarily what I receive a lot of is contract disputes. People are sort of unsure of, how they can get out of a contract, if they have any cure opportunity. And so it really runs the gamut from, am I getting paid properly, to the services I'm receiving are not up to the standards in which I was expecting. And so it's really helping members of the RSPA look at their contract and see what rights and obligations did they agree to when they originally entered into the agreement, and how can we help them? I mean, many times it's not just a legal issue, it's a business issue, and I really try to help navigate through the difference between those, because sometimes it's helpful to have a lawyer send a letter and say, here's the contract provision, here's the issue. But many times members are just trying to get their vendor or their supplier or their partner to sort of move and do something. And sometimes it's better to just have a business conversation. But if a business person is armed with the knowledge of what rights they have, it's easier for them to have that conversation.
Got it. Thank you. And I'm glad you framed it up that way in terms of it's not always legal. Sometimes it's a business issue. Because I remember when I was president of a company talking to our owners, and they would say, like, you don't want to get the lawyers involved, because once you get your lawyers involved, they get their lawyers involved, and it takes a whole different path. So I guess, can you share with us maybe some insights into those contract, issues? Is it you giving advice to the RSPA members, and then they can go back to the vendor? Is that oftentimes what you're talking about? You give them counsel, they're better armed to have that business conversation. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that's exactly right. It's just helping them to either craft a response, understand maybe what the other side might come back with, and so giving them the ammunition and guidance to say, here are your rights. The other side might interpret it differently, and maybe we can spin it this way or look at another provision. It's really just arming them. And many times I will look at a provision in a contract, and the RSPA member will say, that's a really good point. Here's some other thoughts I have. And so it's really collaborative, helping to because our members are very knowledgeable about the business and very knowledgeable about business generally. And so sometimes they just need a little somebody to bounce an idea off of to really get their intellectual thought process moving.
Exactly. Well said. I remember when I first became a business coach a few years ago in the industry, that's what somebody said in terms of oftentimes these business owners don't have anybody to talk through the issue with. And as
Mhm.
long as you can get them talking and maybe ask them a few questions, they're
Yes,
able to think out loud. So yeah, that's
right.
definitely valuable. So contract disputes, you said that's a lot that you're hearing about. Is there a close second or anything else that fits a category? Like are there HR issues or what else comes up as some of the common issues that you're faced with?
Yeah, I think there are questions about employees that run the gamut from do I have to, am I allowed to let this person go during COVID? Am I able to replace this person? Um, and so it's really just, they're all unique and specific questions. It depends on the state, it depends on the some other factors that may influence if the employee has an employment contract. And so it's really, again, just delving into and taking the emotion out, right? Because when it has to do with employees, people, they're concerned about people's livelihood. Business owners are concerned about doing what's right for the whole business, and doing the right thing in the right legal manner. So I find that the RSPA members are very thoughtful in their approach to their businesses and their people, and they take it very seriously. It's not a flippant conversation. It's not without thorough soul searching and again looking at it from a legal perspective as well.
Got it. Well, thank you for that. And so, contract disputes, employee situations, is there, I guess, preventative medicine? Not that you're a doctor, but you're essentially, a business doctor. Are there preventative things that you could recommend to our audience, to the VARs and ISVs listening? What are some things that they can do to help keep them out of more contract disputes, or to help them make sure that they aren't, having issues with employees? What things can they do in advance?
Well, it's like anything, right? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So if you think about these things before entering into an agreement or before hiring an employee, you're probably better positioned to handle any dispute that might come up. Again, in a contract issue, it's really taking the time, not just signing something, right? You have to really look at what are you agreeing to? What are the we're not going to figure everything out on the front end. We really aren't, because life changes, business changes, companies change, leadership change. But it's really doing the best effort, again, collaborating with somebody else, trying to get another perspective from somebody who maybe has had, like, for example, me, I may have seen the same contract 50 times. So I have 50 different instances in which I can draw from, whereas a member may only have seen the particular agreement twice. And maybe some of their coworkers or employees may have seen it two more times. So it's really doing our best on the front end. And there's always something new that comes up. And that's the benefit, too, of having a lawyer in the industry look at things, because last week something may have changed. And then if someone asks me a question, I have the benefit of that last experience as well.
Yeah, I almost envision it too, like if you would pop a hood, I'm no car expert by any means. Somebody pop a hood, I'd look at it and they say, "What do you think?" I'd be like, "Well, it seems good to me," right? But if you
Right.
have a mechanic, they'd be able to test this, stress test this. And so, yeah, if you've seen all sorts of contracts, you can say, "Yeah, this looks normal to me," where I could look at a
Mhm.
contract and just say, "Looks like a contract. I guess I should move ahead." So
Right.
that seems great to be able to bounce that off.
Yes. Yes.
A- And are there internal systems that you see from some more successful solution providers versus other ones? Like, I guess I've seen a lot of folks who are kind of, playing it by ear, especially from a hiring standpoint, right? They're not really diving into learning more about the person and doing background checks and doing reference checks. Is there anything that you would recommend to folks from an employee standpoint that they could do better?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, you find the perfect candidate, but they're so excited that you don't follow up on their references or you don't do a background check, like you said. I mean, in the payments industry, which I think we'll talk about hopefully before the end of our session here, there's a requirement to do background checks because we're dealing in financial and monetary transactions, and many of our ISVs and resellers in the RSPA are dealing with this, and so you really want to make sure that it's fine if someone has a misdemeanor. No one's perfect. I don't get alarmed if a client says I have something. We just sort of work through it. But if you're trying to hire someone for a financial position and they have a financial crime on their record, that's a no-go. That's just a solid no, even though the person might be the most amazing salesperson. Really all we have at the end of the day is our integrity and our reputation, and it's important to surround ourselves with people who we know everything we can know about them. Again, nobody's perfect. I'm not suggesting we need perfection from a prospective employee, but it's worth the effort to, talk to other people and do a little bit of digging.
Got it. And so, one of the big themes from an RSPA standpoint is you don't have to go it alone. And like Jill said, so for RSP members, she's available for those phone calls. We also have for members in our members only section of our website, we have legal templates, a wide range of them. Like you have to scroll down the page in order to see all of them. And so that can help you, especially from a contractual standpoint. And then we have a lot of resources related to hiring in terms of recruiting, assessment tools, interviewing questions, and a whole process that you can follow instead of just sitting down with a person for an hour and saying, like, they seem good, right? We hit it off pretty well. Let's make the job offer. We can help you, with that preventative medicine. So let me ask you, Jill, are you still fielding many questions related to PPP loans and the EIDL, the emergency disaster loans? There's a ton of activity around those earlier this year. Is that calmed down, or are you still hearing about those?
That's calmed down to an extreme degree. There hasn't been any really new guidance out since mid to late summer. We, at my firm, we have on our website at bodmanlaw.com, we have an entire page dedicated to COVID resources, and there are significant number of white papers written by other attorneys talking about PPP loans, criteria, when they came out with listing who had received those loans. And so any updates that might occur would also be out there. I think you would find a wealth of information out there. If you're sitting around on Sunday afternoon watching some football, just get your laptop up and just go to the website. I think they're well written and easy to understand documents out there.
Okay, and you're calling. We're connecting today. You're in the Detroit area, and I'm guessing, yeah. Knowing the Lions, the way that they play sometimes, reviewing PPP white papers might be better for you than trying to watch the Lions blow a lead.
Until the last minute, right? Last week, right?
That is true. Yeah, as we're recording this, right. They just had a touchdown as time expired. So one of the more exciting games in recent Lions history. Yes. But we digress. So okay, yes. So you're not hearing a lot about that. Are you fielding questions about data privacy laws like GDPR, the California Consumer Privacy Act, and if you aren't, should you be? Like, how concerned should RSPA members be about these new data privacy regulations?
Yeah, I mean, I think data privacy generally is very important, regardless if you have to comply with specific requirements of GDPR or CCPA. And, I would just say generally, people should have a privacy policy on their website and not just slap something out there, really understand, like you said, lift up the hood and see exactly what you're doing with your data. And make sure you put that on your website and make sure that you tell your internal teams, this is how we handle, personal identifiable information. People get concerned about consumer data. Now, in terms of compliance with CCPA, I think when initially it came out, everybody was like, oh my gosh, we have to comply. But there are some thresholds that you need to meet in order to have an obligation to comply. First of which is, you have to meet one of these three things in order to have to follow and adhere to the regulations, which is one, if you have more than $25 million in annual gross revenue, you have to comply. And there's been some debate. You'd think these laws are written so that you could just, pull it up and read and have the answer. But the question that came up repeatedly is it all revenue or is it just California revenue? We have, through my data privacy network, which is folks at other firms and folks at my firm, we've all been with the assumption that it's any kind of revenue. So if you have $25 million more in revenue, you need to comply. The second threshold is, I wrote this down, so if you receive or disclose the personal information of 50,000 or more California residents, households, or devices, then you have to comply. That was one I couldn't exactly remember. And the third is if you make 50% or more of your revenue from disclosing or selling California residents' personal information. So if you meet one of those thresholds, then you need to comply. If you don't, then it's not something that you need to be concerned with, because there are certain specific elements of complying with California that takes some time and effort and energy and resources that if you don't have to comply, I don't think that it lessens your privacy standards. I think that there's just additional hoops. If you have systems in place and have a privacy plan, I think it's no matter the size of the business, I think that's necessary. And then GDPR, which is the EU privacy law, that has to do with if you're transmitting data back or processing data back and forth between the EU and the US for our members. And so if you're not doing that, then there is no obligation to comply with GDPR. Now, compliance isn't, I remember when that first came out, it was this very thick, favor spelled FAVOUR kind of thing, right? And really reading, I just remember putting all these personal hours and just thinking, I just don't understand this. But it's been out long enough that we've had enough exposure, we've had enough sort of other people writing about it that I don't think it's overly exhaustive to comply. I mean, you have to be a bigger business, right? Somebody has a $5 million business, who's not transmitting overseas, you're fine. You don't have to worry about that. But I think we have a lot more standardized processes to be able to comply with GDPR than we had maybe a couple of years ago. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'll speak for our small VAR and ISV members, but kind of through my own experience. So I was self-employed, started my own business a couple years ago, and so started looking into these privacy requirements. And so I'm hoping you can help me with my whiplash here. So on one end, I was like, oh my gosh, these are big, scary regulations. If I don't, cross every T and dot every I, somebody's going to come after me. And then on the other side, it was like, yeah, but this is only for going after really the Facebooks of the world, so I should be fine. But then I'd go back to, but if I step over this, and there's a regulation and everybody has their own individual privacy, I could have one person sue me and I'm in trouble. And then I go back to, the folks who served as mentors for me, and they were like, yeah, the legal stuff, it's all new. No one's really going to come after us. It's all going to get sorted out, so you'll be fine. Like, I was always in this, like I said, this ping-ponging back and forth of what to do. And it can be really scary. And I'd say it's more paralyzing than anything. So I guess, can you help? I almost feel like I'm having like a counseling session with you now. Like, can you help me get centered on this? But what would you say to somebody who has that same mindset as me, that they're scared on one end and fearing a lot of the, regulations that they're just not really familiar with, and then also they're like, well, I'm an SMB, so I shouldn't be in any trouble. I guess I can just, not pay attention to any of this stuff. What's the right balance there, Jill?
Yeah, I always say to people, as long as you're doing something and moving in the right direction, I think we're in good shape. And so I think it's something as simple as having a conversation and saying, and getting comfortable, right? I don't, what information do I maintain, right? I don't do credit card processing. All I do is I have their name and address, and I'm not sending marketing information. And, so then we start to say, okay, right, this isn't a big risk or exposure. let's at least put on our website, if we do collect information, what we would do with it. We wouldn't sell it to a third party. So I say it's something as simple as having a very short conversation and just sort of walking through what information you collect. And again, you have to, if we do find through an analysis that you are, collecting some personal information you want to market, then you start working towards that. It's a stepping process. It's not like, boom, you have to have you have to have a compliance officer, you have to have a chief privacy officer. It's really starting with doing something and then making a step in the right direction. And I feel like if a regulator came to you and you were a small to medium sized business, you would say, I've analyzed my data, the information I collect. Here's the things I've put in place. Here's our future. And I think that's a good argument to have to say, as opposed to, yeah, we didn't think we should comply. It's really this big law. You can't stick your head in the sand.
Got it. So you've got to pay attention to the regulations, but they shouldn't, totally constrict you from
No,
I can't
no,
move forward. Because I can
right.
tell you, I remember going through these laws before, and there was a reseller who I met at an RMH conference, Retail Management Hero, many years ago, and he was from Denmark, and I had him on my email list. And I'm going through and thinking, like, I got to get him out of there, right? Because if I send an email to Denmark, they're going to come down on me because I'm holding on to some
Right,
EU info. So all
right.
right, well, I feel better. And again, we're a little over 15 minutes in, so this is still a free conversation. If you weren't an RSPA member, this would cost you about $100 so far. So speaking of spending $100, let's pause here for a moment to let our listeners and viewers know that an RSPA membership has never been more valuable or more affordable. The RSPA has expanded its VAR and ISV member benefits to include discounts on health insurance, HR services, office supplies, and shipping. Also, RSPA members now have access to a legal advisor, a security advisor, and a VAR and ISV business advisor. That's all included in your annual RSPA membership, which for resellers starts at just $250 a year. That's 68 cents a day for these high value services. Also, thanks to our sponsors who support the RSPA community and make this podcast and video series possible. Our platinum sponsors are Blue Star, Heartland, Shift4 Payments, and the special sponsor of this episode, ScanSource. And then finally, the RSPA has launched the RSPA Solution Center, an online platform designed to introduce VARs and ISVs to innovative solutions and connect them with the providers of these solutions. You'll find product details, videos, white papers, case studies, channel executive contact information, and more. To grow your channel business, Google RSPA Solution Center today, and to receive the benefits of an RSPA membership or RSPA sponsorship, email membership@gorspa.org. That's membership@gorspa.org. And if I was making fun earlier of the Lions, if you're a Jets fan, you definitely want to be hopping around the RSPA website on a Sunday, the only winless team so far in the NFL. But once again, I digress. Who knows? After this podcast drops, maybe the Jets will go on a winning streak, sneak into the playoffs, and win the Super Bowl. But I'll take the under. So, all right, Joe, back to you. So, you mentioned payments earlier, and you have quite a bit of experience in the payments world. Can you first share with our listeners and viewers details of your payments experience before we dive into some of those questions, please?
Sure. So I graduated from law school and was trying to figure out what kind of area of law am I going to practice in. I had an undergrad in accounting, so I was moved into a finance group, and then just started working with a group that was doing a lot of work in the payment space. And once I sort of figured out all of the nomenclature and the terminology, I really started to fall in love with the entrepreneurial clients that were coming to the firm. And then I started to attend trade shows. So I started to attend all of the regional shows, the ETA show, the RSPA shows, all of the Money 2020, and really started to, again, I think when you think about payments and payments, it's really, my first entree is really just knowing enough about payments to be useful with relationships, giving introductions, knowing other lawyers at the processing companies. But, really, then it turns into general counsel work. It's really all about contracts and driving revenue to the business, and again, helping with HR issues and helping with new entity setups, helping with any kind, hardware, software, every kind of contract that can happen. So I think that's why representing RSPA members is really easy. It's an easy transition because all of the concerns and issues are really business issues. The payments experience has been helpful, and many of the RSPA members, I think, has started to move to drive revenue from that new vertical and business line, rather. And so many of them are just getting into payments or have done payments, but are really now starting to focus some of their business resources to that line of business. And so I've been helping a lot of members with different kinds of payment issues that come up, like can I surcharge? Can a merchant surcharge its customers? Can we provide cash discounts? I think that in the payment space, the most important thing are the residuals. How am I going to get paid, and how do I protect that asset? As well as my customer list is another really important asset. I've been doing it for 15 years. I'm an advisory committee member on the Southeast Acquirers Association. I've been a member of ETA. I've been a member of WNet. I've served on committees, and just been around the industry and for 15 years. And for a little bit, I did a little bit of aviation work, but my passion is really here in payments and ISVs, VARs, resellers. Those kinds of clients are my where my heart is.
Yeah, well, payments and aviation can both be bumpy rides,
Yeah,
right? There's a lot of turbulence in both markets.
yeah.
So, can you talk about the unique perspective and I guess what you're seeing where you've worked with the Visas and Mastercards of the world, like the biggest of the big, and then you're working with
hmm
somebody who's maybe, has a partner, it's a family organization, I guess. Can you talk about making those two worlds kind of connect with one another?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I can give a lot of value is to the smaller, folks who don't have a lot of resources. And it can be, just a quick conversation and just helping them build their knowledge base or their connections. There was one of our Canadian members who needed a contact in Canada. And so I had somebody and made the introduction, and just the member, RSPA member, was just so appreciative and thankful, and would have never maybe had the opportunity to connect. I mean, and that's what these sort of organizations are all about. It's about connections. It's about sharing the mutual relationships that we develop with our partners, with our friends, with our co-members, and really that's, I think, something that I really enjoy helping the smaller folks with, and really protecting their asset. Um, a small ISO or a small ISV or a small reseller, they're out there hustling every day, and it would be heartbreaking for them to not have full access and guarantee of their income, in the future. And so really for me, it's protecting. I take it personally too, right? Like if something bad happens to them, I just get all fired up, and I have to remember, okay, Jill, it's not you personally. Like you didn't cause this issue. You're trying to help them resolve it. So again, I get very passionate about helping folks protect what they've put their hard work and talent and time into. And I can help by a contract or by an introduction or by having a contact on the other side that we're adverse to that I can talk to reasonably. Um, so that's sort of, how I help the little guy.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. And I guess there's a perspective of, resellers and ISVs have many different vendor relationships,
Yes.
and not that not I won't say any of them are not important, but that payment residual kind of rises above the rest of them because it very much serves as a lifeblood in terms of they could lose one of those residual opportunities and try to replace with something else. But replacing that payments, especially we saw that this year from a COVID standpoint, there are
hmm
a lot of SMBs who who live and die by that. So they really need to protect it. I guess part of that, drives you in terms of why it's so important, because
Yeah.
it is, for many people, a giant percentage of their business, of their organization.
And that's why you can't just sign a contract, right? Because you could be out there hustling and maybe you have no idea that the bottom could drop out at any moment. And that's why you have to, those are the people who really need someone to look at their contract, because residuals should be paid forever, as far as I can say.
Yeah, and just yesterday, I had a reseller who left me a voicemail, called them back. They've been a fairly new member of the association. They've been a VAR for years, but they've never gotten to the POS space, and they got it to the
Mhm.
RSPA so they could learn more about it. And they were talking about signing a contract with a payment processor, and they said, I really just need somebody to tell me, what percentages are better. And I said, well, it depends on percent of what, right? And it
Right.
depends on the other fees that go along with it. Like, don't go with this alone. And I shared with him your contact information. So
Mhm.
again, to tie in with your aviation thing, nobody should hop into a plane and go, yeah, it seems like I can fly this. Oh, look at
Right.
this, like it's moving. And you're like, do you know how to land this? Uh-oh, haven't figured that part out yet. So uh,
Right.
just a couple more questions for you, Jill. And this one is about tying in with payment processing. So it's added a ton of complexity to our channel, when it first started 10 to 15 years ago, and things haven't gotten simpler over time. So what are
Right.
some payment related legal issues that should be top of mind for VARs in 2021? What should they be watching out for?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I always say residuals, residuals, residuals. I mean, that's really the bottom line there. Confidentiality, being able to protect your assets. Surcharging is a big issue. A lot of making sure you are compliant with Visa and MasterCard, American Express, and Discover and JCB card brand rules. Really, it's the industry. There's this payment facilitator that's been around for a long time now, at least 10 years. I remember having my daughter, and someone was calling me while I was on maternity leave, asking me about this new aggregator and what a payment facilitator does. So it's, maybe early termination fees, making sure they comply with state laws. In terms of industry disruptors, who's coming in. Square came along again when the whole payment facilitator aggregator came through, and people said, oh my goodness, we're going to lose the whole ISO channel. People need people, and so that hasn't gone away. People are concerned about consolidation from the big processors. I think what's happened is people just have to learn how to deal with a new relationship, and make sure that their reporting they're getting is still sufficient for them to manage their business. I think those are some of the big, items that continue to pop up on a recurring basis.
Thank you. Yeah, and certainly a long list there. I know we're running short on time, but can you explain what a payment facilitator is to our audience, or have heard them called PayFacs
Yes.
before? I've met them before. I've looked up the definition. I've engaged with them. And if somebody would ask me, I would still have this really kind of mushy definition of it that probably wouldn't help the listener. So I'm hoping you can help our listeners and viewers. What's your perspective on what is a payment facilitator? You were calling them an aggregator. Again, some call it
Yes.
PayFacs.
A payment facilitator or a PayFac is a company who enters into agreements with submerchants to process payment transactions. A submerchant is typically somebody, well, they can't process more than $1 million in Visa and MasterCard transactions. So a submerchant is typically somebody who is a hairdresser, maybe, or somebody who is selling goods and wares at a outside swap meet kind of location. So a payment facilitator is able to process payments on behalf of a bunch of sub-merchants, and they take liability for those sub-merchants underneath them. So if you are a payment facilitator, you take liability for all the people underneath you, all the merchants. So you have to have a really sophisticated underwriting process to be able to manage that risk.
Thank you. And
So
I
that's
guess I've seen ISVs then become PayFacs because instead of them, signing on a merchant and the merchant having to get approved, they just say, no, we're a payment facilitator. You instantly can start accepting payments.
yeah,
But that ISV can't just do that on the side, right? They have to have internal operation structures, controls, personnel addressing all those different things. And from what I understand is they get essentially a bigger residual oftentimes from the payment processor, but they have a lot
yes,
of overhead, a lot of risk as well. Am I
yep,
explaining that aspect of
yes,
it correctly?
absolutely, yes,
Got it.
yes. It's not something you jump into.
That's exactly right. Well, the analogy I would always use to people to explain them, I said, it's like you run a daycare center and somebody says, what would really help if we, to help funnel business to our daycare center, if we had a place where women gave birth, right? And so why don't we just add that on? You're like, well, wait a second. If you're going to do that, you got to have to add on all these doctors and nurses and whatever. Like you can't
Right,
just say, we're going to do this thing. So I'm
right.
sure that analogy falls apart somewhere, but it resonated with a couple of folks I talked with.
That's a good
Yeah.
one. I like it.
Yeah, just don't get it. Learn about PayFacs, learn about that model, explore if it might be a good thing for you, or explore how those organizations might impact your business.
Mhm.
But again, you don't have to do this alone. So, Jill, my last question for you: how can RSP members connect with you to discuss their legal issues and talk about contracts?
I think the best way is to contact me via email at jmiller@bodmanlaw.com. And I'm really doing my best to respond in very short order so that you can understand how quickly we can maybe set up a call. Or if you put your question in the email, it's very easy for me to just respond to that. If it requires a more lengthy conversation, then we can set up a time and we can either Zoom or we can just get on the phone and work out whatever questions you might have.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, we hope to our listeners and viewers that you enjoyed our discussion today. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the RSPA YouTube channel and the Trusted Advisor podcast so you never miss an episode. We'd also appreciate if you would rate us wherever you find your favorite podcast. My personal philosophy is the more stars, the better. And if you'd like to learn more best practices for VARs and ISVs in the point of sale channel, check out the RSPA blog. You can find it at gorspa.org and then clicking on RSPA blog. Before we go, big thanks again to Jill Miller for joining us today and sharing her wisdom. Also, thanks to RSPA Marketing Manager Chris Arnold for his production work, Joseph McDade for his music, and last but not least, thanks so much to you for listening. Our goal at the RSPA is to accelerate the success of our members in the point of sale ecosystem by providing knowledge and connections. For more information, visit our website at gorspa.org. Thanks again for listening, and goodbye, everybody.